Several counties in the country have experienced long periods of drought and have registered a huge amount of rainfall at the same time in the past few days. The rains have caused flash floods, which have wiped away animals that barely survived the drought. But several parts of counties such as Isiolo, Samburu, Marsabit and Garissa are still struggling with the effects of the drought.
Well, Citizen TV's crew visited several parts of these counties in the past 2 weeks and brings to the fore the challenges pastoralists have faced owing to the prolonged drought. Scientists are warning that some areas might not be conducive for grazing ever again, owing to the severity of the drought, as well as overgrazing. Well, this scenario now has the government, private sector, and non-governmental organizations rushing to mitigate against the long-lasting effects of the drought. Here's Nimrod Taabu with Voices from the Drought.
Life is harsh up the northern part of Kenya. Nature here is unapologetically cruel. The punishing heat from the scorching sun now well into its third year. It has been 5 seasons without a drop of rain here. Pastoralists here live under these extreme conditions. We encountered communities fighting to survive one day at a time. Counties that lie under this belt of severe climate include Isiolo, Samburu, Marsabit, and even Garissa. Our first stop is Gambela, a few kilometers from Isiolo town. Here we were greeted by carcasses of livestock scattered across this plain, bare land. Thousands of livestock died here due to the severe drought. There hasn't been any rainfall in this area for 2 years. As we head back to Isiolo, we find groups of herders moving with their animals. Most of them are goats and sheep. The animals are weak, having been walking for several days now all the way from Marsabit in search of pasture.
Alikuwa na ngombe kama 300 hapo awali kabla hii jalali haijakuja. Baadaye yeye huko kwako ni Saidi ya Moyale aliweza kuhama hadi hapa akakuja hapa.
The few animals that Galicha has graze on dry vegetation. Even then, he had to lease this 1 acre piece of land.
Tangu amekuja hapa ameweza kununua hizi mashamba za wenye wako na land kidogo yenye anaweza uza. Alafu akaweze kulisha hii ngombe waweze kusustain.
Inside this makeshift holding area, some animals are too weak to stand up.
Hata tangu ameleta hapa kuna wengine bado wanaendelea kukufa kama ile yenye tunaiona pale na wengine pale hapo kwa barabara. Na anasema bado hakuna usaidizi yote amepata na anaona hata tumaini lolote bado hata hii inaweza survive.
Next to Galicha's makeshift home is his neighbor who is also struggling to keep his animals alive. This cow was unable to get up on its own and has not fed the entire day. Lalpanya area along the Isiolo Moyale road, and here we meet more herders moving with their animals.
Sisi hapa tuko kwa hali hatari kabisa. Kama kwa mfano mimi nilikuwa na ngombe kama 100 na leo sina hata moja. Sasa vile tuko sahi tunaogopa hata kwa wanadamu.
We traveled to Kor village, which is approximately 73 kilometers from Laisamis town in the county of Marsabit. For the villagers, life has become unbearable for them and their animals. Water points are scarce and far in between. The Kor livestock market too is collapsing.
Tuko na njaa ya pande yote. Pande yote. Binadamu, mali, ufungaje, kila kitu. Saa hii mbuzi yangu ni kama ni mbuzi 300. Ameenda saa hii mimi kuna mbuzi 9.
The animals are not attractive because they have lost weight and will only fetch between 1,500 and 2,000 shillings.
Saa hii tunachangaa kwamba Mungu kwa nini amefanya sisi hivi? Kila kitu mpaka saa hii tumestuka kwa sababu ya chamba yetu ameisha na karibia sasa watoto. Hata jilali na chukua binadamu wacha mali.
Transporters with big trucks used to buy animals here and take them to the big cities, but that business is no longer viable. This ramp has not been used to load animals onto the trucks for several years. It is only a matter of time before the market shuts down. Merile River at the border of Isiolo and Marsabit is completely dry. It has been for a couple of years. Herders have been forced to dig up the riverbed to get some water to give their camels. Government, the private sector and non-governmental organizations have teamed up to try and mitigate the effects of drought by introducing initiatives such as the concept of insurance to livestock keepers. Musa Kalkina is an insurance agent on a mission to register many villagers who are livestock keepers to take up insurance policy for their livestock, known as index-based livestock insurance. Ndarakan Eswamat is renewing her membership in order to take up the policy. The policy requires one to register a certain number of animals for as little as 300 shillings. But unlike other insurance policies, the underwriter agrees to pay the livestock owner a certain amount of money, which will help the pastoralist to buy food for his family, fodder for the animals and other essentials at a time when their animals are less productive. The payouts are made when the drought is severe.
Tunaweza tu kwa mwezi kama 1,000 hivi 800 hivi ndo tunaweka tu ndo tupate baadaye tu kutumia basi tu. Tunatumia tu kununua vitu chakula hivi ya watoto. Juu sai kuna kiangazi mingi sai, mifugo wanakufa na watoto pia wako na njaa.
Mtu anaweza kukuambia sawa ninakubali kuregister. Inakuwa ni changamoto kwa sababu unakuta mwingine hana pesa hapo. Mwingine anakuambia okay, utaongojea niuze mbuzi ndio nianze nianze malipo. Na pia kuna wengine unakuta pengine wengine jana amejuzi ameshauza mbuzi, unakuta pia mwingine na ako tayari kulipa.
In this village, only 9 people have taken up the policy, but little uptake is as a result of the diminishing number of animals.
Yeye mwenyewe binafsi ndo anakuambia niko na mbuzi 30 lakini sina uwezo wa kuregister hizo 30. Kwa hivyo yenye ile uwezo naweza register sasa ni 10. Unaona? So yeye mwenyewe tu ndo anajichagulia hiyo
Musa has been able to register another beneficiary. The insurance payout of cash amounts are made through a rigorous process that involves another institution, the International Livestock Research Institute, which ascertains the severity of the drought. On the ground, scientists like Dr. Kevin Shikuku inspect the grass and fodder situation.
You first create the unit areas of insurance. Pastoralists are in those different units areas of insurance, and the index monitors again forage conditions within the unit areas of insurance. A trigger is pulled for specific unit of insurance, and a report is produced also based on that unit area of insurance. So that can mean that you might have a neighboring unit area of insurance that does not receive a payout because although their forage conditions might be bad, it didn't get to the 20th percentile. Whereas in another one, it got there and therefore the report shows they should be paid.
In Mureti, Samburu County, we are greeted by song and dance of Rendile women. All their male spouses have left the Manyata in search of pasture. They have been away for several weeks. The women are left to tend to the little livestock left, mostly sheep and goats. This is one of the areas where ILRI, in conjunction with student scientists from the University of Cornell in the USA, had called a trigger after observing drought and pasture conditions getting severe.
Ukipata hiyo insurance, unalipa watoto school fees, unanunua chakula, unanunulia mfugo wako kama nyasi.
Na inafanya kazi namna gani? Kama wewe kwa siku unatoa pesa ngapi ndio unapewa insurance, na wakati wanakulipa pesa ngapi?
6,000
kwa mwezi ama kwa mwaka?
Tunajua ni mara moja tu sasa ndio tunapata.
With the reality of climate change, Nimrod, and the increasing frequency and severity of drought, then we challenged ourselves to see what type of solution can we offer to this type of communities.
Droughts are now more prolonged, so when they happen, they tend to take longer for them to disappear. And the frequency has also increased, right? So, and so that, of course, then really means that the vulnerability of, pastoral livelihoods to drought impacts has increased, compared to earlier days.
At the ILRI headquarters in the outskirts of Nairobi City, scientists are busy revising, collecting and encoding data from satellite imagery and other apparatus.
If the vegetation, we actually take past 20 years of data, and we see how the pattern of the forage and the pattern of the rainfall has been. And we actually check that in past 20 years, we actually calculate the anomaly, and we identify that how much is the deviation of the forage from past 20 years. So this is all is happening without us going into the field and verifying for the losses and checking each and every vegetation type.
The index-based livestock insurance project, which is led by a team of researchers within the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, has been working to improve the resilience of pastoralists to drought-related losses.
The index-based livestock insurance is more of a asset protection program. So here we are trying to introduce something, and we have been introducing it before, that how without waiting for the losses to happen and then paying for them, it's better that we can protect those assets and then pay in advance, so that if you have cattle and other livestock, how can you actually protect these livestock, and we don't have to go and verify your losses.
Today, almost 45% of the pastoralists who take up the index-based livestock insurance are women. Reason?
And the Visa product, which is really a village insurance savings product, is looking at the woman as a caregiver in a pastoralist community. So she is affected by the same climate change, but in addition, she has all these other needs. And so in her case, what the product does, when the trigger is called by our partners who do the assessment on the climatic conditions using the satellite data, but when they call the trigger, instead of giving money for the pastoralist to buy alternative feed for the animal, this is money to the woman to enable her to take care of her family needs.
In Rapsu village of Isiolo County, the vegetation cover here is very different. Pastoralists here were encouraged by donors to start planting grass, and several acres of land that used to be bare and barren now have plenty of grass and crops growing. The blueprint given to them by experts was simple: trap the water from the neighboring Bisandi Game Reserve and get different variety of seeds. This venture was started 2 years ago, and today the pastoralists have been able to feed their animals with green, healthy grass.
We had formed 6 fodder groups. Right now, there are like 3 good ones that are surviving, which had access to water. So you see, some of them had no boreholes. If they had boreholes, they would have grown fodder through commercial production.
Project coordinators include the county government, local and foreign non-governmental organizations, and a group of pastoralists who are tired of losing animals.
County of Isiolo has been coming in and purchasing now the fodder and, distributing it. But now the problem is the production is too low. Like, for example, this group, I can see it had done better because they had harvested around 1,200 bales or more, but you see, it was not adequate.
Once the grass matures, it is cut and tied up into bales. It is then transported to a warehouse where it is stored and only used when the community needs it.
Tungekuwa saa hii tuna vitu mingi sana kama hizi mradi ingeanza hapo awali. Vichwa ya watu imefungulika. Tumeona ya kuwa ukulima ya kuzunguka na mifugo kuhama hapa na hapa pale popote sio nzuri. Tunaweza kufuga mfugo wetu na tupande nyazi tuilishe ikiwa hapa.
The index-based livestock insurance has also been beneficial here.
Tulipata makastoma wapatao 60 mara ya kwanza na walifaidika. Malipo walipata mara ya kwanza. Ni vile mtu ana register na mifugo yake. Kiasi ile ana register na ile pesa uwezo wake.
We've really been appealing to the county government to use this type of risk mitigation and climate resilience programs before the drought hits, because by the time the drought has hit, the problem is so large.
In Garissa, the harsh weather conditions are also being experienced. Most of the pastoralists hold on to their dying animals because traditionally keeping livestock is their livelihood.
That explains why you see, for example, the grazers, so cattle, which, when the grass disappears, they suffer the most. They're the first ones to, for example, get wiped out by drought. And so that can also mean that over time, pastoralists, in a way to minimize those risks, they start diversifying into or moving to species that are more tolerant to the drought conditions.
Hundreds of animals have been gathered here for watering. The owner of the water trough charges the herders an amount of money depending on the animals. He buys water, which is delivered here at least twice a week. The animals are then allowed to drink to their fill. They will return here after a couple of days. This is Lemiricho Ore, a prominent Manyata in Isiolo County. The locals here do not subscribe to the Christian or Islamic faith. Every year between the months of February and March, the elders conduct a ceremony. This is Obore Ore Manyata, one of the very many Manyatas that are scattered across Kor area here in the county of Marsabit. But here there is very little to write home about. For the locals, there is nothing to celebrate here. They have lost all their animals, goats, sheep, camels and donkeys. But despite all these adversities, locals here still have time to make sacrifices to their God. The locals here perform rituals that include slaughtering a goat or a sheep, reciting prayers before proceeding to prepare a meal from the slaughtered animal. It all starts with selecting an animal which is brought to the doorstep of the Manyata. The selection of the animal is only a preserve of the firstborn child of every home. An elderly man performs the ritual assisted by fellow elders and Morans. Even the young ones are not left behind. This ceremony is conducted from one Manyata to the other.
Na hiyo shughuli maona hiyo ni kuomba baraka ya Mwenyezi Mungu. Hata ngamia sasa nakonda mbuzi na manayo mbuzi na kufa.
They say even if the rains fail to come, as they have in the past, this sacrifice will continue, even if it means killing all their remaining animals.
Yakifika ngamia inachinjwa. Unaona? Dunia yote ndio inaenda kwa ngamia hiyo. Kama mambo yalikuwa ngumu na kuomba kwa ngamia hiyo. Ngamia inachinjwa na bana kuliwa. Unaona? Na leto kuni na chomwa.
This issue of climate change and climate adaptation and mitigation cannot be dealt with by one person alone. It is all of us in our own different ways.
I think it will get worse, and I think we should really focus on innovation. There should be investment in innovation that will come up with solutions in the drylands to sustain livelihoods.
In the desperate north, it is desperate measures for a desperate situation. No effort is spared to fight the drought. Nimrod Taabu, Citizen TV.